Buddy, this is 1,087 days today since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, presumed murdered, and we'll be talking about that today. Um, and we'll be talking about the security breaches. There's so much going on in the news. Let's go through and see if I'm on Facebook. I just posted a few things. I'm on. Okay. And my sound is there. All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. So we have from Major General Eisenhower's security there on Fort Bliss confirmation um, of the security breaches on Fort Bliss. And so, like I said, a few days back or a week and a half back, we have an alliance now inside of Fort Bliss. And so we're getting some intel, boots on the ground intel. And of course, one of the major cases right now is the 14-year-old girl that was living in the barracks. That's a huge breach in security. And then there's more to that case that one day I'll be at liberty to reveal because it screams breach in security. So I wanted to remind everybody about one of the largest breaches of security, and I didn't transfer it over. Let me do it. Of in Richard's case, and that is to talk about the FBI man and what that all means, and I have it right here. I wrote some notes down. So it's really important to remember that whole. Okay, so it happened on October 26, 2020. You can go on to Find Richard Halliday and see the CCTV footage. You can see the cashier's video testimony right there on Find Richard Halliday. And it's very important to remember that. But what I want to focus on about that, and let me remind everybody what that's about, and I've done it over and over and over again because we cannot forget it, is that Nadal Baim walks into a Dollar General. He sees Richard's flyer, and there were two flyers, and he said, "You can take down the flyers." Okay. And she's like, "Why? What's going on?" "Well, he has been found." "He's been found?" "Yes, the FBI, I'm with the FBI, and the FBI has found Richard." And he proceeds to tell her about the 5 locations and that the FBI has found Richard's remains in Juarez, Mexico. He's dead. Finds him. He's dead. That means remains. But the 5 locations really confused the cashier. But we know now that Richard was dismembered and he was put into different locations. And so we have these autopsies, and the autopsies are all partial remains and fragmented remains. And from what I have read and heard, the U.S. Army doesn't have, or the FBI, because is the FBI hiding our son's remains? Because Nadal Baim, who has, a claim to working for the FBI, but he also turns out to be the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado, the G3 of the 32nd ATCOM. And G3 is operations. It's really, really important. It's so important. And when I talked to him, he said, well, a lieutenant colonel told me. So then, everything fit together. And now, why is that a secret? Why did the FBI and the CID tell us on that day? Because we didn't wait. We didn't waste a minute. We gave them everything as soon as we had it. And they came back and told us that he was a nobody. Okay? Because we didn't know who he was. Right? We didn't know who he was. He was just this man. And since then, we have found out his identity and more. So the CID and the FBI were not forthcoming. They were not transparent to us on who Nadal Baim is and was at the time, and his connection with the FBI and his connection with the G3. The G3, let's, okay, Bugado, whatever. But this is with the G3 of the 32nd ATCOM, Richard's command operations. And they did not tell us. They didn't tell us, y'all. They didn't tell us that Richard was missing. They didn't tell us that Richard was a whistleblower. They didn't tell us that Richard's remains were found in Mexico by the FBI. Who this Nadal Baim was. They didn't tell us. And there's so much more. But on those three facts, I would say charges need to be pressed against Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe. Charges need to be pressed against so many in the agencies, and of course General McConville. Even y'all, do you understand the breach of trust, the breach of duty, the breach of integrity, the harm to our country? They didn't tell us that our son was missing. Matter of fact, Major General Clem Coward, he's the only one that could have done it at the time. So I allege strongly that the information that I have received, that we have received in Team Find Richard Halliday, that he stopped the investigation into the search of Richard's whereabouts. He knew what was happening, and that's why no one told us, because he canceled the search. He canceled the protocols in the search for our son. And I think even more happened. We have information that there was a confession on August 6th of 2020. And that would shock people. Not really. And so what is happening is Major General Eisenhower has, look, he has the 14-year-old living in the barracks. He has a breach in security in G3 of 32nd AgCom of the missing soldier, of the murdered soldier, not murdered soldier, the murdered Vanessa Guillen first absent soldier, the whistleblower. That's he has so many security issues, security breaches. And it just, does it matter to them? Does it matter to Major General Eisenhower? Is he under even more severe pressure in, in other directions? That means that there is a foreign and domestic enemy that is over or wielding their power of our Department of Defense. That's what that means. If we're not getting justice in Richard's case, if they are denying us due process, if they're not being transparent in this case, that means that we have enemies of our country, foreign and domestic enemies of our country, wielding their power within and over our Department of Defense, over and within the general ranks, over and above our 4-star generals. This is what this means. And this is a national security threat. I've been saying this because none of this could happen if our military was defending our Constitution, was defending the land and the people, was doing their job with integrity, even if only, let's say, 30% of them was doing it. You could say 20%, 20-80 rule or whatever. But, we have a real problem because the DA in our cities get away with what they're getting away with. The AGs get away with what they're getting away with. The judges get away with what they're getting away with. The attorneys, all the AUSAs. The politicians get away with what they're getting away with because our military is not defending the laws of this land. That is what they are supposed to be doing. And because they are the military, because they have the weapons, because they have the boots, because they have the planes, because they have the bombs, because they have it, then the oversight has no power over them. What is a man going to do without any army behind him? Okay? So this infiltration and takeover of our military, which was very clear during COVID, because COVID could not have happened unless it was controlled and funded and protected and, instituted by the Department of Defense. And sure enough, where did the money come from to carry out the fake, the fraud, COVID time? It came from the DOD. And that's why I say that McConville committed crimes against humanity. And it is interesting that they're still in the news trying to shape the narrative. Like they're saying now, oh, Fauci lied. Well, we all knew that. We all knew that. I mean, not all of us knew it, but there was a lot of us that knew it, that he was lying. And fortunately, I was a guinea pig a willing guinea pig, and a willing guinea pig that was harassed for being a guinea pig, because what Rob and I decided to do is totally ignore the whole COVID thing as much as we possibly could, because we needed to look for our son, and we didn't want anything to get in the way of stopping us from talking with people, going into soup kitchens, going over to Juarez, going into offices, going into shops, standing on the corners of streets, talking to people in vehicles, handing out prayer candles, handing out flyers, any way we could to be around people that might have heard something, might know something. And we decided as much as we possibly could, because we always want to respect people, but we absolutely really ignored it. And because of all the hands we did shake, because of all the hugs we did get, because of all the lines of so many people going back and forth from Juarez, going into restaurants, going into bathrooms, going into, just traveling, everything. I can tell you I was a guinea pig. And y'all, people that were afraid, that decided to be afraid, okay? Because fear is a decision, right? Fear is a decision. You have to decide whether or not you fear death, okay? Who do you fear, right? Even the Bible says, fear God. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. You decide. I'm not going to fear the COVID and this whole thing with viruses. Okay, I'm just going to tell you I don't believe in viruses. All right, I don't. Exosomes or whatever, what cells, the trash that cells put out, but they're not living. No matter what you call them, they're not living. So, there's no proof. There's no proof at all. I've gone over this and over this and over this. And I'm going to stand very firm on that. And I think I have a right to stand firm on what I believe and what I know to be true. Because let me tell you, if there was some kind of boogeyman out there called a virus, I would have gotten it. I would have suffered. And maybe they would have had to, I don't know. But that did not happen. And I did not stay 6 feet away. I did not stay masked. I didn't stay double masked. I didn't have a Cobra Strike, any Cobra Strike. I did not stay at home. I did not. And now they're coming out with this. And because I have said this in the past, that the germ theory is trash. It's a theory. And I've gone through that theory and I think it's trashy. I believe in the terrain theory versus the germ theory. Okay? The terrain theory. Now, as an adult, as a free person, I'm allowed to pick the theory that I believe in. And that was not respected during this whole thing. And we know that so many service members were not respected for their decision, their belief, their choices. And just because you're in the military does not mean you give up your rights. And they were retaliated against severely and continuously. And now you have Senator Cruz wanting to bring back these soldiers or service members that were retaliated against because they're having recruiting problems. Of course, when your rights are not respected, that information gets out to the public and they go, wow, why should I join the military if we're trying to fight for our rights, but our rights are not being respected? And that we have generals like General McConville, like Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, that are committing crimes against humanity with these untested Cobra strikes that have pieces of aborted cells in it, right? I don't want to say the whole thing. I might get deleted. I might get censored. But we have the right to not get those. And yet the very people that we have entrusted with all the tools necessary to defend our freedoms has weaponized them against us to enslave us to a narrative that we don't believe in. And he does not respect us. And then they retaliate against us and they bully us. And so, absolutely, if they are going to do that to those that had virtually zero risk, it wasn't like, oh, you're going to have a high risk of death or whatever. No, there was zero chance of any of these young people dying of some virus, because viruses don't exist, so you can't die of that. So to say no to something that's make-believe, that's a fraud, and so you see something, fraud, waste, and abuse, and then you get retaliated against. What it does is it corroborates what happened with Richard. That this is all narrative driven, that the defense of our country, the defense of our Constitution, the land and the people is not a concern for them. And you see what happened to former Vice President Pence this weekend when he sits down and he's asked about the cities, the land, and the people. And he said, that is not my concern. That is not my concern. You're talking about the former Vice President of the United States, and he's saying, that is not my concern when it comes to the welfare and the progression and the opportunities in our cities, in the country that he is supposed to be servicing. No, he wants cluster bombs for Ukraine. And, I know a lot of Americans haven't been overseas. I have. I've spent most of my life overseas. These are beautiful, historic countries and cities. There's so much history. And these bombs are meant, in my opinion, to destroy the history of a country and rebuild it with a new narrative. There is no reason we need to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. And that's his concern, along with our Senator Lindsey Graham, along with our Representative Timmons. That's his concern, not the well being, the progress, the opportunities, the infrastructure of our cities here in this country. So let me correlate this with Richard's case. Richard, being a whistleblower, reporting to the CPS crimes against children, that triggers the IG, that triggers a CID. That is not being taken seriously. They're not even looking into what happened with his reports. The military isn't until after his remains are found. And then they have to scatter around and go, oh, wow, well, maybe we need to cover ourselves legally on this one. But nothing happens. And then he's reporting to CID crimes within his unit with weapons sales and equipment sales, and of course you would say ammunition sales, and then also even harassment, even sexual assault and things like this. So the timeline is super important because it puts everything together. And that's what we've been working so hard on. So remember today, October 26, 2020, right? That's very, very important because we know by then they had found Richard's remains. We know by then that the FBI, because we know this has been reported to us, that on October 26, when we gave them that information, the FBI took over the lead of Richard's case. So, there's a lot behind that also. But we know by then, on October 26, 2020, they absolutely knew that Richard had been murdered. I mean, we have reports, that it was a party, and that they abducted him and took him to this house, this party, they called it, a retaliatory party. Well, we couldn't get him to commit suicide. We couldn't do enough to him to get him to commit suicide, because that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to give him PTSD. They were trying to retaliate at the highest levels. And I'm talking about the retaliation I'm alleging with everything that I know. It came out of the CID office. Okay, you can say, oh, that was just within the unit. No. This is within the CID, and I'm even thinking maybe the FBI, but I know for sure it's coming. The order to retaliate against Richard came from the highest levels and was carried out through like the CID. That's what I allege. That's my just putting the pieces together. Because of the type of retaliation that was going on. And of course, Clem Coward was involved in that. I mean, he signed his name to it. So, and this is to the exposing of a whistleblower. But yeah, we do have these reports that it was a house, and that's where they murdered him. And um, yeah, it never gets easy, y'all. It never gets easy. What is really comforting is that Richard stayed strong. I remember calling him in June for Robert's birthday. I'm going to cry. Um, and having a good time with him and everything. And he, all he said to us was, "It's really bad." He told me it was really bad, Mom. And, um, and that he didn't want to talk about the Army. He wanted to talk about anything else but the Army. So, they did whatever they could to retaliate against him. And he went to the CID for help. And it was a CID that is now really implicated in his murder, you know. He went to the CPS, and we have connections with those that work in the CPS with. So, where do you go? You can't go to your command because they're foul. You can't go to the CID. You can't go to the AUSAs. And all of a sudden, you're getting retaliated against, and you're saying, wait a minute, what about the children? What about that 7-year-old that's getting sexually assaulted in Lalani Hart's bedroom? Right? What? Don't you care? Um, but these are cold blooded, heartless, cold blooded fractions of men. Fractions of men. Cold blooded. And they're just ugly. And they're up to no good. So, you go you go to CID and you meet with Marlon Soto. You meet with Tavita Nusa. You meet with Ron Steeg, the good friend of Jay Pollan. You meet with you meet probably with Jay Pollan there. Little office, y'all. Little office, little clique. It's a little clique. And the leadership in the military allow it to happen. Allow these cliques to happen. And Lalani Hart was reported to be in charge of the CID on Fort Bliss. That she was bragging about it. So Richard goes there, and the next thing he knows, he's being set up. He's being set up, but you know what? He stood strong, and that's a comfort because he stood strong. And he is so clean, y'all. He's squeaky clean. He did something so remarkable for a young man. For a young man that is just was so capable, was so apt. I would call him the apt man. The apt man. Um, Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And there is not one female that has anything negative to say about my son. Not one. And it's just, yeah, you might have a fraction of a demon out there. But, you know, these narratives that they're trying to push, and the only thing that these narratives that they're trying to push prove is that CID Quantico needs to come knock on their door, needs to come and bring them in and interrogate them. If they seem to have answers, they need to be interrogated. That's it. So, um, yeah, that is a crazy truth. So, what happened on October 26, 2020, in respects to the security breach? And I'll read you what I posted. It is deeply troubling to consider that Baim, who is the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado of G3 of 32nd ADCOM, Richard's command operations, had access to sensitive information regarding our son's case. His claim of receiving information from a lieutenant colonel and identifying himself as part of the FBI raises serious concerns. The news he conveyed about Richard's troubles and the search for his remains in multiple locations, particularly Juarez, Mexico, was delivered to the cashier in a secretive manner, hinting at the need for utmost confidentiality. Why is that? Why would that be a secret? And I think the cashier, she's number one, y'all. She is number one. I am forever grateful to that cashier. She's number one. That information is so important, but it is alarming to realize that if not for the security breaches that have occurred, Richard's family may never have learned the disturbing details surrounding his disappearance. Or they would have learned it a different way much later. But on October 26, 2020, the stars in their course fought against Sisera. And there were security breaches. And yes, they are concerning. But what concerns me is that our FBI, our agencies, and our DOD, and those on Fort Bliss, Major General, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, would keep that information from us, would manipulate and try to manipulate the files to get Richard to look like he committed suicide, that they would work diligently, several meetings, keep the what happened to Clem Coward losing his command a secret from us, keep that a secret from us. That's another absolute despicable maneuver that corroborates that they are covering up the murder of my son. And they're covering up for pedophiles. They're covering up for people that want child pornography, that want these sex cults, these doggy mask sex cults, that want to sexually assault people, any people and children, and get away with it, and think it's funny, and think it's their right, and have no respect for humanity, for people's privacy, for people's decisions on how they want to live, for people, they're just criminals. Absolute. This is what a criminal is, when they have no respect, no thought for other people, no thought, no respect for their country, for their nation, that they hate nationality. They hate anything that is good and wonderful and true and legal and law. They are just rogue. They are rogue leaders. They are rogue people, or fractions of people. They're losing their humanity in their rogueness, if that's a word, in their crimes. And they retaliate against whistleblowers, right? Tucker said this really well. They're protecting these major criminals that, want these sex cults and want the pornography and want the child sex trafficking, while they want to retaliate against the grandmother in the wheelchair holding up a pocket constitution. Well, I fit two of those, the grandmother, I'm a Gigi, and I carry a pocket constitution. Because people need to know that they're human, that they have a right. In this country, we have rights, and yet our rights have been violated along with Richard's, because we still don't have any answers to the non-warrant that was supposedly used to search our house. So our house was illegally searched by a fugitive apprehension assault unit. Okay, now I didn't mention this at the beginning, because if you have a warrant and we cooperate with whoever comes with a warrant, because we're law abiding. But when you find out there's no warrant and they're sending an assault unit, that means they have no probable cause that there's anything dangerous going on, and they're sending an assault unit to violate your rights instead of just a sheriff deputy, a regular one, or a police. I mean, this is fraud, waste, and abuse of our provision to our country, to our community, to have these tools, to use them properly, and yet it costs so much more money to send an assault unit than just to send, a regular sheriff's deputy or a police officer to the house to say, "Are you all right? Let me, I just wanted to let you know we understand this situation, and we're going to keep our eyes open and our ears out there, and we'll let you know. I mean, no, we had the full body gear and coming around the back and da 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 da. Y'all, our rights were violated in more than one way. In more than one way. Fraud, waste, and abuse, for one. Lies. Where is the trust? They service us. They have to answer to us. We don't serve them. And yet they keep wanting to manipulate us with our taxes and everything because they think that they, pull our chain. We're supposed to be pulling their chain. We're supposed to have oversight. And what has happened is, like in history, where you have a community hire someone for security to come and protect you, and then you pay them, and then they decide to become king and rule over you. And take your possessions and call it a tax, right? So yeah, this is what's happening. Because let me tell you, 1,087 days we have gotten more and more information every day. Every day. But they had this all. And they've made us go through all of this. And they've stolen all those hours from us because they already had it. And they serve us. So it's like the people you pay to do the investigating, to keep the peace, to keep things secure, to give you the answers, are withholding this information from you. You have to then do double duty. You have to pay them and you have to go and do the work. So it is really, they've just violated so many things. Because remember, they didn't even tell us about Danae Katzen. They didn't tell us about Leilani Hart. They knew about Leilani Hart a long time ago. They knew about Tavita Nusa a long time ago. They knew about Marlon Soto a long time ago. Because Marlon Soto and Tavita Nusa, they're just, they're brothers. They're brothers. And that Jay Pollan has this conflict of interest in that small little office too. No wonder they could commit the crimes that they were committing, that Richard was reporting, and feel emboldened to do it because they had the security and the intelligence agency, the law enforcement agency, wrapped around their finger. They were part of it. And that's a sweet deal, right? That's a sweet deal. I mean, sweet deal for them. Absolutely ugly for us and our future and our children's future. And Richard, he made them risk losing that. And that's why they could never chapter him out fully. And, to tell you about that a little bit, is that they gave Richard a field grade Article 15, a GOMAR, that they made it permanent, then chaptering him out, and then a field grade Article 15 with maximum punishment and then some, taking away 3 ranks, which totally you're talking about bullying. Just green light on you could do whatever you want to Richard. And he stood. Did he wear down? He did. That last video, he was crying. And Richard just didn't cry. So, but they couldn't suicide him. Okay, they couldn't get him to suicide himself. And so what they did is they suicided him. I guess that would be the best. No, they just murdered him, y'all. They murdered him and dismembered him and put his body parts in different locations. And because they were the security, because they were the law enforcement, they had connections, uh, and they got away with it for a time. For a time. But the stars in their chorus fought against Sisera. And God demands, he demands justice. So I'm not a very, I try not to get too angry because I know everything is in God's hands. And uh, that just um, doesn't make you think straight. And we need to do this legally, but we need to hold them to account for what they have done to the Fort Bliss installation, to our service members, to our defense, to El Paso community, to the El Paso agencies there. I mean, and of course to Richard. But you see, there's so many more victims other than Richard. I want to make that really clear. This is a systemic problem. This is a criminal syndicate problem. And this is, and where do you go? Because the DA, the extent that our officials went to cover this up is vast. And the evidence is there. Where is Yvonne Rosales? Where is she? Right? Where is she? She has a story to tell, if she would dare to tell it. Where is, oh yeah, I just saw her and I put her on. Nancy Grace. Where's Nancy Grace? Um, that's a story to tell. I have it here. Um, and they will go to huge extents to, here's something with Attorney General Ken Paxton, who we've been in communication with. He was kind of retaliated against. He just raised $1.7 million in 11 days. In 11 days. So people are seeing the collusion, the corruption, the criminal syndicates, and they don't want it anymore. They don't want to look the other way anymore. They want accountability. They want to, they want new leadership. They want new leadership. They want a future. And I feel the same way. Maybe we need to try those that have family that have a record of being hardworking, building things, law-abiding. We don't want a bowling ball of coke being at the White House. We don't want the whores and the blow at the White House. in our courtrooms, in our any of our public houses. We're just done because we know that our country will be done if we don't. And this case is so, we've got it all, y'all. We've got it all. We just need someone like Attorney General Ken Paxton to do something, like uh, Veronica Escobar to do something, like the DA Bill Hicks to do something, like Major General Eisenhower to do something, to really care, to care. So, yeah. Any questions? Okay, I know it's Monday night and we had it was a busy day again because of the new information coming from Major General Eisenhower's security team to let us know the security breaches from within Fort Bliss, that there's so many, there's a problem, and that our whistleblowers are being retaliated against. And whistleblower status is, you know, it should be honored for everybody, right? For everybody. And our key witness, I should say, one of our key witnesses has been banned from Fort Bliss, and that was also a setup job. There was no investigation. Um, and of course, another security breach. If you're not going to investigate, if you're not going to do your job, you need to be relieved because we're talking about the security of a military installation. So, and I know it's not that easy because there's so much corruption now. My gosh, there's so much. And that you're also, when you want to stand up against it, you get suicided, or you get murdered. You get your head chopped off. If you're a whistleblower, right, in today's world, you risk getting your head chopped off. If you want to stand up against something you believe is fake, is fraud, is harmful to the future, and it turns out to be that, don't let these narratives fool you. You got to really do your homework today and discern everything. So we have a couple confessions. One confession is very interesting on August 6, 2020. We're asking them to look into that. Of course, we still have no answers back from even Judge Shook. Judge Robert Lee Shook is thwarting his duty, and I think his license is at jeopardy for thwarting his duty like this. We're talking about giving a simple answer to warrants and probable cause. Where is he? So, this is political, which it shouldn't be. You're talking about a missing soldier, and now we have the FBI hiding Richard's remains. We have the autopsy reports that have not been addressed by the command. Why not? Yay or nay? And then they take Richard's file and they go, oh no, it wasn't leaked, it wasn't tampered with. But then they tamper with it. And of course it was tampered with. It was tampered with then, and it's tampered with now. It's sanitized now. They took out all of the evidence of retaliation and decided to promote Richard twice. once in December 2022 and 4 months later in April 2023. Why? Because of the congressional inquiry that we're working on, congressional inquiry other people are working on. If you are a soldier, you can ask for a congressional inquiry in this case and other cases. Um, but in this case, thank you very much. And we need those letters. We need those letters to Major General Eisenhower asking him to be transparent in this case, to crack this case, because he could crack it in 24 hours. I'm telling you, we have everything. We've done all the work for them. They just need to do it. And it will be very interesting who gets arrested, who gets charged, or um, the information that comes out. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. And um, God bless you. And know that the world is a beautiful place. Absolutely a beautiful place. And we need to keep it beautiful. We don't need to let them, that love ugly it up. You know what I mean? Um, we need to keep it beautiful. And it's so vast, so big that it can absolutely be a place to progress, to produce things, to build things. It offers us a beautiful future. And that's what we need to look forward to. Um, but not everyone likes to do the same thing, but we can't tolerate the criminal culture who likes to violate other people's rights, who likes to violate the Ten Commandments. You see, the Ten Commandments. And I'll even go a step further, that likes to violate, because, in my faith, I believe that every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God is law. It's law. And that doesn't scare me at all because it's a medium-sized book, case laws, right? Um, and very few penalties, very few penalties, no prison time, maybe some jail time waiting for a trial, but no prison time. Offers us all freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom, right? Um, and so, yeah, I'll go a step further. I'm very proud of that. I think that's the way forward. And, that's my belief. That's the way forward for our children to have a really productive, beautiful future is to establish every word that proceeds from the mouth of God, right? And he does say it. I just heard over and over again from Tim Ballard, who made, was the star of the true story of The Sound of Freedom, that his saying is from when God gets a little bit mafioso, says it's better for you to put a millstone around your neck than to cause one of these little ones that are mine to suffer, to um, go wayward. And I think that is exactly in this case. Richard absolutely knew that law. He knew that law, that he cannot let little children, a 7-year-old, be sexually assaulted by numerous members of Leilani Hart's family or household in her master bedroom and go unchecked, and anything like that unchecked, and let it stand. It cannot stand. And Dallas Hart, uh, being in an incestuous relationship in his household, while he is a platoon leader with Richard at Fort Bliss, um, you know, it can't, nope. That's illegal. That's illegal. And there's a lot of reasons why that's illegal. The destruction is paramount from that. Because you see, all pornography is child sex trafficking, right? It's all child sex trafficking because people get groomed into that kind of lifestyle as children. So, okay, everyone, thank you so much. Good night, and I will be back tomorrow, God willing.